Hello and welcome to the Black Hat Bushcraft channel. I'm Matt Mercer and I want to thank you for taking the time to tune in for this video. And today I am so excited to finally be bringing this content to you guys. I've had a ton of requests for this video and I've had a ton of inquiries about what we're talking about today, and that is the new WC Knives Black Hat Bush Blade. And I am super proud, number one, to be working in collaboration with William from WC Knives. You guys, if you watch my channel often, have seen me do lots of reviews on different models of William's knives. And of course, without question, his quality is exceptional. And if you're familiar with WC Knives, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But I am really proud to be bringing this knife to you guys because this is my first personal design that I've dreamed about for years, and William has helped me to bring this into fruition, bring this to life, so to speak. And this is a project that we've been working on for about 6 months now, and from the release of this video, we're within a 2-week time zone of this knife being on the market. Now, the initial first run of this knife, I think, if I remember right, is 35 pieces. So it'll be 35 of these knives. They will be retailed at Ridge Runner Blades in Wilkesboro, North Carolina. And I'll leave some contact information and stuff down below in the description box, and you guys will be able to go to the Ridge Runner Blades website and purchase from there. But with all that said, my goal today is to share the knife with you, give you an up-close and personal look. I want to discuss my design and why this knife is the way it is, and hopefully you guys will find this interesting, and it'll, again, just give me a chance to kind of explain my design. So let's take a look at the Black Hat Bush Blade by WC Knives. All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and take a closer look at the Black Hat Bush Blade and discuss my overall design intent. Now, this knife came to be as a drawing that I did personally with a pencil on graph paper, and I drew this knife to scale and I sent it to William, and he was gracious enough to make this thing come to life. And man, he really nailed it on his first attempt. This is prototype A. We went on to experiment with the prototype B, and we came back to prototype A, and with a little refinement we got this knife, which is the first run. This is a production knife here. Just some subtle adjustments to the handle, but the blade, it was perfect right off the bat. This is a 4.5 inch cutting edge and approximately an overall length of 9 inches, which to me is like the perfect belt knife. It's a balance of being big enough without being too big. And for me also, I've always thought that 1/8 of an inch stock was ideal for a bushcraft knife. It's strong, but yet it's not heavy. It's not burdensome to carry. It's not awkward. It's very, still a very nimble blade with 1/8 of an inch steel. And if I need to do a task like split into, let's say, a 2 to 3 inch piece of tulip poplar to make a bow drill set, I feel comfortable to do this with 1/8 of an inch steel. And with it being a full tang knife, it should be no problem with good technique. So again, to me, thickness is important, and 1/8 has been that fine kind of balance point for me. It's not too thick, not too thin. Now, for the blade, what I wanted was more of a slender blade, and my widest point is 1 inch from the spine to the blade. I like a Scandinavian profile. Another right off the bat thing that you notice with this knife is the fact that half the blade is a true 0-degree Scandi grind, and the second half is a saber grind. And that lends the front half of this blade to slicing potatoes and onions and meat and things that you're going to put in the bush pot or skillet. It just slices like a dream, like a kitchen knife. Being that it's thinned down a little bit here, it just goes right through material. Now, obviously, I can do those tasks with any Scandi grind knife, but having that thinned out front for that saber grind is just fantastic for slicing duties. Now, it's important to mention that the grind of this blade from the very base to the tip is exactly the same angle. So the sharpened edge of this knife is the same. If you can sharpen a Scandi knife, you can place this on a stone, register that Scandi bevel, and trace it right down to the tip exactly as a Scandi. Essentially, this is a Scandi. It's just a very narrow Scandi here. Again, the angle is the same, so that should not scare you on this knife. It is very simple to sharpen it or hone it. Now, another thing about this knife is the handle, and I like a knife handle to have enough contours that it feels like it really securely fits in your hand, but it can't be so contoured that it limits the grip positions. This knife has just enough contour that no matter how you hold it, it just seems to fit in your hand like a glove. Even if you're turning it backwards to do those chest lever cuts, or if you choke up on the knife to do those draw cuts when you're fine carving things like spoons and spatulas and stuff like that, this knife cannot be held in a position that's not comfortable. My fingers just fit every which way I hold it. And that's important for me because the handle of the knife is the part that you interact with most. So it needs to be comfortable. If you're familiar with the WC Knives Nessie, this handle was kind of an extended version of that. The Nessie handle is a little bit shorter. This one's kind of stretched out, but it's absolutely perfect. Feels good in your hand. And this production one is even better than Prototype A in my opinion because it's a little bit thicker, and I'll show you that soon. But that is important to me, the handle. Another really important property about this knife to me was to get the tip right. And a lot of times the tip is the weak point on some of the knives that I've seen. This one retains enough strength that I don't mind batoning here to split into material, again, getting dry kindling, making bow drill sets, feather sticks, stuff like that. But yet the tip is fine enough that I can get in and do detailed work when I'm cleaning out notches and stuff like that. So finding the perfect tip was a challenge in this design, but this one is just for me perfect. A lot of what I do in the woods involves cooking. And I'm sure a lot of you guys enjoy cooking in camp too. And I want a knife that can process down game, whether it be a squirrel, a raccoon, possum, or whatever I'm doing. And if you notice the tip of this knife, it has that drop point here, which is kind of like a butcher knife in a sense. You can get the tip under the skin, but then that back right here, that hump on the back of the knife kind of rides along the muscle tissue and separates the skin without binding the tip up in the actual meat. So this knife, probably a secondary function of the knife, but it will do that task and do it well. Obviously, our forefathers long ago did that task with sharp rocks and things like that, so any knife can do that job if you have the skill, but this knife will do it well and very, very comfortably. Another really important property that I wanted to make sure this knife had was a continuous curve from the tip of the blade to the base. You can see how we subtly canted the spine of this knife up so that we could get that nice curvature. Now it's very subtle, but it makes a big difference in the way the blade performs. If you have a straight blade knife, you can get the same effect, but you have to use your wrist, and it's just a matter of developing your technique to create the same effect. But when you have this curved blade like this, it just naturally slices. Sometimes I see blades that are a little bit too curved, and sometimes that can almost limit some of the things that the blade can do, but this one has just enough. Let's say I'm going to make a feather stick just as an example. Once I register the bevel of the knife, all I do is just push down, and naturally, because of that curvature, it's slicing the material, as you can see here. So just that natural curvature of the blade is just the perfect amount to make the knife slice well. You can see I'm not really doing anything with the knife. It's just that curvature interacts with the material just perfect to create that slicing action. So that curved part of the blade to me was one of the critical things and part of what makes this Black Hat Bush blade perform so well. So again, with this knife, we have a lot of things going on. A comfortable handle, the proper dimensions. We have that dual grind, so that way we have the best of a woodworking knife and yet a game processing or food processing knife. We have a fine tip for those little delicate bushcraft chores, but yet rigid enough that we can do heavier work with it. Of course, we do have a 90-degree super sharp spine on this knife for processing down tinder or fat wood, for striking a ferro rod. That's a secondary tool on the knife. So for all of those reasons, this knife for me is like the perfect bushcraft knife. So with all of that said, let's take this first run Black Hat Bush blade. Let's do a little work with it to test it out. All right, so let's go ahead and just make a simple feather stick. And making a feather stick is pretty simple. You just register the bevel on the stick, just like if you were going to hone up your knife. And making feather sticks is not like an essential skill, although sometimes that skill does come in handy. But it is a great way to kind of get a feel for a knife if you have a new knife, and just kind of see how it feels in your hand, see how controllable it is, just get a feel for the grind of that knife. So that's one of the tasks with this knife that is extremely comfortable to me, is It just makes really fine feathers. That grind on a WC knife is just great for that. And to me, just making feather sticks like this is just kind of relaxing. Something relaxing about cutting, slicing through that wood like that. Enjoyable. And I don't always make feather sticks when I'm in camp, but sometimes I like to make 6 or 8 feather sticks and get a fire going that way. It's just a fun skill to practice, and again, good exercise with your knife. So you can kind of see when I'm getting there, just some nice fine feathers. I always like to start fine at the beginning and kind of get more coarse as I go, and that material will burn longer, just kind of help you getting a fire started. Let's do one more here. Just have another piece of that tulip poplar that we batoned up. When you first get started, you have that sharp ridge there. You can get that really fine material. And the constant curvature of this blade makes this just a joy to do. Once you get going, you kind of get a feel for it. It just goes really quick. Little rotate, hit that ridge. Rotate, hit another ridge. It just goes really fast, as you can see. Yeah, so this is definitely a great blade for this type of task. And I can keep going with that, but you get the idea. It's very comfortable, and with the curvature of that blade, that subtle curvature, just does a really nice job slicing like that. All right, so let's do just a couple of traditional bushcraft notches. We'll start here with a square notch or log cabin notch. I'm just going to create a stock cut, come down about 1 inch, create another stock cut parallel with that. And now this is where that Scandinavian profile blade really excels, as I can come and get between those 2 stock cuts really easily. And if those stock cuts are close together, this is where the tip of this knife really does excel. We can get down in there and clean that out, reinforce that stock cut, turn the material around, come back the opposite way, reinforce that stock cut once again. That should clean it out. There we go. You can hear that little click. You know you're going to get a clean notch when you do that. And just come back once again on the other side. That's it. This is the type of task that this knife really excels at. When you're making pack frames or putting together things in camp, this is one of those important bushcraft notches. Clean that up one more time. I'm so picky about this stuff. I always want it to look nice and clean. Like that. You can see what we got. Just a nice square notch. All right, so let's come back on the other side and do just a saddle notch. Whenever you're doing a saddle notch, you want to come in to the tip of your blade where you have a little bit more of a rounded area. And you can see how I'm using my thumb and my wrist. I've got my hand reversed on my knife. And just kind of work your way in to create a divot. This is great if you're making traps. Like when I use a figure 4, sometimes I'll set it up with a saddle notch like this. But just using the round part of your blade, you can kind of dig in, turn the material around, come back the other way, and just kind of clean that out. You can see you just have a little simple saddle notch there. And of course you can make that as deep as you really want it to be, just using the tip of your knife. And again, this knife is very comfortable in this grip. I use it a lot like this. I probably use my knife in a reverse grip or chest lever position like this as much as I do any other way. And it just works great when you're doing these little tasks. There we go. Just get that notch cleaned up a little bit. And you can see just a simple saddle notch, something that we use often in bushcraft projects. All right, so this time I just have a nice little hook that I cut off a sapling. And what we're gonna do is create a pot hook. This can hang on a cooking system, and then we'll create a bell notch down here at the end. When you make a bell notch, you just create a stop cut in an X formation. It's actually 2 stop cuts. You see what I'm doing, just kind of rocking that blade, and again, with it being curved, it does a great job with this. Now what we want to do is create an opposing stop cut. And this is much easier if you lay it down on a solid surface and just baton your knife in, but I'm standing up because it's just the angle I'm filming at. Now what I'm going to do is come in with that thumb push, and I'm just going to kind of bring my blade in to meet that stop cut. I'm not going to try to cut too deep right to start with. And I'll come back, reinforce that stop cut, and I'll be able to pop that material right out. That'll form kind of the template for my notch. I've always said that if you can make a bail notch with a knife fairly easily, then it's probably a good bushcrafting knife, or at least a knife acceptable for doing bushcraft style chores. You can see what I'm doing there, just kind of bringing the curvature of that blade down to the notch. See what I've got there. Now on the opposite side, what I'm going to do is come down to the base of my blade and pull the knife the opposite way to meet my other stop cut. And just pop right down in there together. And now I'm just again reinforce that stop cut here. You can hear that pop, and there, all that material pop right out of there. I'm going to reinforce that one more time. Just come back here to that stop cut, pop that material out. You can see what I've got there. Now I just have to clean the center portion out, and this is where this Scandinavian profile blade, and what I mean by that is from the blade to the spine of the knife being kind of shallow, like 1 inch. A lot of knives are, can be 1.5 inches, 2 inches deep, and those are great knives for heavy use, but they're not very nimble when it comes to doing this type of chore. But this particular knife, just being slim profiled like that, makes it more nimble to do these kind of intricate little tasks. Being able to get that tip down in that notch like this. Just reinforce that stop cut one more time. There we go. That's almost, well, it's definitely usable right now. I'm gonna just come in here with that tip and kind of clean it up a little. See that thing almost perfect for that there. There we go. So you can see what I got. Just a nice little pot hook that can grab hold of the bail of your bush pot, or if you're using a fish mouth spreader to hold your bottle or your canteen cup over the fire. And we got our hook on this end, just perfect. And that kind of task is really what I had in mind for this knife. That slim profile and just that fine tip. It's nimble enough to get in and do these little intricate style tasks like that. All right, so while we're at it, let's go ahead and talk about draw cuts with this knife. And I use draw cuts a lot when I'm whittling in camp, making things like spoons and spatulas, but I have to change the grip position. And you can see the contour of that handle and how my pinky and ring finger fit right in there. My thumb fits right here on the side of the blade. And now I can draw the knife to me safely. You can see how my thumb joint here meets my body long before the blade ever does. But this will allow me to see where the blade interacts with the wood, and I can peel bark or plane down material if I'm finishing out a spoon or spatula. If I'm doing a hearth board for a bow drill set, I'll often use this just to kind of get everything leveled out. So draw cutting with this knife is really comfortable because of the contours of that handle, and again you can see that curvature just slices through. And it just gives you a lot of control and allows you to really make some nice bushcrafting projects when you're sitting around camp. So draw cutting, definitely a big plus with this knife. Definitely something that I can control and safely use in this fashion. All right, so let's test out the spine on this knife. It is really sharp, and one of the main uses I use a sharp spine for is processing fat wood. Less than a minute, I've got a whole pile here that's enough to fill up the palm of my hand. Easy. And that's plenty enough to get a fire going. So I got my HD6 ferro rod here. Piece of cake. With that, can add on some of these feather sticks. Black-Cat bush blade is definitely a good companion when it comes time to make your campfire. Of course, any great belt knife has to have a great sheath to carry it when you're out in the field. And I'm very proud that my good friend Randy Smith from Stitch Gear Outfitters has designed a couple of really nice sheath options for this knife that'll be available as well at Ridge Runner Blades. And this is my choice of sheath that I tend to carry most. It is just a right-handed vertical carry sheath, just a plain sheath. But with all of Randy's sheaths, he uses, I think it's a 9 to 10 ounce weight leather. This stuff is heirloom quality. He finishes everything out just to perfection. An amazing craftsman, and Randy's sheaths are a perfect match to William's amazing craftsmanship on the blades. I'm super proud of this. He's got a nice black hat stamp to customize my sheath for the knife. Really cool that he did that for me. And another option is this vertical sheath Randy makes that also has a ferro rod loop on it. So if you like to carry a ferro rod, this will give you that option. And this is just my prototype Black Hat Bush blade that we looked at earlier. And another option that Randy has made is his traditional 6-way sheath. Now, if you really want a versatile sheath, one that you can carry high, you can dangle it low, you can carry it horizontal, right, left-handed. This gives you all of those options, and it's an amazing fit as well. He's got this thing dialed in just perfectly so that it fits the knife. And also you can see there's a ferro rod loop here on the side. So just beautiful, beautiful craftsmanship. And once again, we've got that super awesome black hat stamp right there. Again, super proud that Randy has done that for me. And so several beautiful sheaths here and a couple of really good options that, again, you will have available to you when the knife comes out from Ridge Runner Blades. So thank you again, Randy. And I'm excited for this amazing knife and these amazing sheaths to be paired together. All right, so I know this video has gotten just a little long-winded with me discussing my design intent with this knife, but I've had a lot of questions from people asking me why the design has this dual grind or why the shape of the blade and so forth. So hopefully this has been helpful in showing the knife in use, doing some bushcraft, woodcraft type stuff. There's a lot of other things I could have done with the knife, but the video would just get crazy long, so I didn't want to go on too long with that. But I can tell you over the last 6 months, at least 6 months, I've been using this knife when I come into the woods. I've carried it with me every time, and I've done just about everything with this knife that I do in the woods, whether it's food prep, wood processing, carving. It does it all, and it does it outstanding in my opinion. Again, you're going to see me post other knives on my social media accounts. I love my Mora knives, my PKS, especially that Kepar XL. I love that knife. It serves me well in the woods, but this particular knife is my design, and it's exactly as I would want it to be, and it does everything that I do, and it does it well for me. I hope that those of you guys that invest in this knife, I hope it'll serve you as well as mine is serving me, and I look forward to many more years of use with this. I know William Collins puts his heart into these knives, and I know that when those knives go out, they're going to be right. And of course, if you order a Stitch Gear sheath, it's going to be right too. Those sheaths are made to last a lifetime and beyond. And I'm proud to put my black hat and my name on this knife as well. I know it's going to be a success. Remember that when you see this video, within 1 to 2 weeks, this knife will be available at Ridge Runner Blades in Wilkesboro, North Carolina. It'll be a limited run. There's going to be another run. It's already been ordered. Another large batch of these knives will be on the way. But if you want to get in on this first run, you want to go ahead and jump on it. They will go quick, I promise. So Ridge Runner Blades, within a week to 2, you can reach out. My contact there is Jason Wellborn, so feel free to contact Jason and let him know you're interested, or jump on it as soon as it's on the website. So thank you guys. Thank you, William. Thank you, Randy, for making this possible. Thank you, Ridge Runner Blades, for taking this up and being the distributor for these knives. And I'm super excited, and I can't wait to hear from you guys when you get it in your hand. I'll talk to you guys with another video again very soon. And until that one, take care, be safe, and as always, God bless.